Welcome in, everyone, to the Football Addicts Anonymous podcast. Just me once again today. Hope everyone had a good 4th of July weekend and July 5th as well today, with being the holiday today. Literally nothing going on in terms of NFL news, NCAA news this past weekend, but did have one thing for each, as well as we'll do our AFC South season preview today. So I'll just roll along right into it. Congrats, Chase Elliott, getting your second win of the season. I know I got a Matt Kenseth shirt on right now, but Chase is my boy. So, all right. So the one piece of NCAA news we do have is something in regards to nil news. I'm sure we'll be hearing all about these top college players, especially college football and men's basketball, the top two revenue-producing sports in college. We'll probably be hearing about all these guys signing different endorsement deals coming up in the next couple of months. One that caught my eye this weekend, Oklahoma quarterback Spencer Rattler. He signed an endorsement deal with Raising Cane's, the fast food chicken company. So just thought I'd point that out. You know, it's one of the top college players and college football players this coming year, expected to be in the Heisman hunt as well as probably the playoff hunt as well with Oklahoma. So yeah, and my one friend asked, because he wasn't sure, he thought Raising Cane's was just like a Georgia thing, and I was like, no, like it's like a whole Southern thing, and there's definitely Raising Cane's in Oklahoma City, anyways, as well as one here in Athens. So NFL news wise, just a correction from Friday's show on the penalties from OTAs. The Niners didn't have their OTAs from next year taken away. They voluntarily canceled their last OTA practice as well as their mandatory minicamp. So that took care of the penalty that would have taken away practices from next season. So that's it. That's literally the only things we have going as far as NCAA and NFL news. So let's roll on to the AFC South preview here. So we have Derrick Henry, Carson Wentz now in Indy, Trevor Lawrence, number 1 overall pick. And I had no clue who to put for the Houston Texans because of the uncertainty of Deshaun Watson. So I went with one of their million free agent signings in Mark Ingram coming over from the Baltimore Ravens. So first off is Derrick Henry and the Tennessee Titans. 11-6 for me. Week 1, I have them beating the Cardinals at home. They go to Seattle and lose that one. They beat the Colts in Nashville, beat the Jets in New York, beat the Jags in Jacksonville, come back home feeling good at 4-1. They go on a 4-game losing streak, losing to Buffalo at home on Monday Night Football. They lose to the Chiefs in Nashville. They go to Indianapolis and lose. They go to LA and lose to the Rams and Matthew Stafford on Sunday night. So after a 4-1 start, the Titans are at 4-5. They go on a 3-game win streak, then beating the Saints in Nashville, the Texans at home, and then going to New England and beating the Patriots. That puts them at 7-5 at the bye. So not the greatest week 13 bye, late one, but 7-5 gives you a chance at the playoffs and the division. So I have them coming out of the bye, beating the Jags at home, going to Pittsburgh and losing, beating the Niners on Thursday night, beating the Dolphins at home, and then beating the Texans in Houston. So that's a 4-1 end to the season to get them at 11-6. Key games for me: Monday Night Football, Week 6 with the Buffalo Bills. That's in Nashville. Have them losing that. The next week is also a key game, I think, in the whole scheme of the AFC playoffs. Losing to Kansas City at home. Like I said, that's the first half of that 4-game losing streak. And then also the Sunday Night Football Week 9 in LA against the Rams. That is also a loss and a key game for me. Originally, I had that as a win, but I think that Matthew Stafford against this defense, I don't think it's that much improved from last year. So, and then one more key game, their last primetime game, Thursday Night Football at home against the Niners, Week 16. That is a win for the Titans. So, going to the depth chart here, starting off with the wide receivers. They revamped the wide receiver core, adding 3 key guys this offseason. Obviously, the biggest one, Julio Jones in the trade from Atlanta. Again, I thought that deal was pretty solid. I would not have paid a first-round pick. I've been adamant about that, and the Titans didn't have to do that, which is good for them. They didn't overpay, and I think Julio will be a very good contributor for them. And possibly, I still like A.J. Brown more, especially because he's younger. But he's going to definitely take some of the coverage and pressure off of A.J. Brown to produce as much as he would have had to before they had Julio. And I think he also fills in nicely for Corey Davis, who's that big-bodied receiver. A.J. Brown's big-ish, but not as big as Corey Davis or Julio are. Next guy, Josh Reynolds, coming over in free agency from the Rams. Going to be a good slot guy there, complimenting Julio and AJ. We'll see. I was intrigued by him before Julio came because, he had never really been a top guy. He was always the 3rd or 4th option in LA. And now he's again the 3rd option. So we'll see how much he can produce, especially with the run-heavy attack that they do in Tennessee with Derrick Henry. Last receiver to talk about, Dez Fitzpatrick, listed as the 4th wide receiver right now. 4th-round pick this year. Solid Senior Bowl. I didn't really watch him at Louisville too much, so I'm not too familiar with him. But like I said, I watched him at the Senior Bowl. 4th-round pick. He's definitely going to get a chance, and I think he'll produce a decent rookie season based off the lack of quality depth that they have at the receiver position behind him. So next guy here, tight end Anthony Firkser, first year as the full-time starter. in his 4th year with the Titans, only 2 starts throughout his career in his first 3 years. So we'll see if he can step up into that Jonnu Smith role. They've had very good play out of the tight ends in recent years. Delaney Walker, Jonnu Smith, can Ferkser be the next guy in Tennessee? Because we know and we've seen that Ryan Tannehill really does like to throw to his tight ends. So last guy on offense here, 2nd-round pick, Dylan Radins out of North Dakota State, starting at right tackle right now. Really liked him coming out. Is a great replacement after they had the whole Isaiah Wilson issue last year. So I liked the pick, and I think he will be a solid addition and finally fill in that right tackle spot that was a void after Jack Conklin signed with Cleveland. Defensively, we're going to go to the defensive line. Nose tackle, Tyir Tart. 2nd-year guy, undrafted free agent last year. 7 games played in his first season. I think he started once. That the thing is there's not that much at the nose tackle position for the Titans. They had a hole once they traded Jarrell Casey 2 years ago, and they've never filled it. Laryl Murchison, I think he could be an option to slide in there. Otherwise, it'll be inexperience in the center of their defense in their base 3-4. So we'll have to see how Tart plays. Going to the linebackers here, 4th-round pick, Rashad Weaver, the backup to Harold Landry on the left side, outside linebacker. On the weak side, outside linebacker position. 4th-round pick out of Pitt. Liked him, liked a lot of the Pitt guys, but obviously he's going to be in a backup role with Harold Landry and Bud Dupree, who came over from Pittsburgh. Bud Dupree, I'm sad to see you go from the Steelers, but can't pay you and TJ Watt. So Titans paid up for Bud Dupree coming off an ACL tear. I'm not so sure that he's going to hit the ground running. That's why Rashad Weaver, I think, comes into play a lot. I think Weaver's going to have to play more than people think early in the season because Bud Dupree tore his ACL pretty late. It was November, I believe, or December. So actually, I think it was December. So, the normal 9 months for an ACL is going to push. Yeah, it's going to be close for Bud to get ready by the season and to be full go when week 1 comes. So that's why, like I said, I think Rashad Weaver will come into play. Tuzar Skipper, his backup as well. Ola Adeniyi, I like him. Another linebacker to talk about here, Monty Rice, 3rd-round pick out of Georgia this year. Listed as the 3rd-string right inside linebacker. I'm not so sure about that. He can beat out Jan Johnson, I believe, to back up Rashaan Evans. They have a solid inside linebacking core. Jayon Brown, Rashaan Evans, the starters. David Long Jr., BJ Bello as well there. But yeah, I would expect David Long and Monty Rice to be the main backups and rotational pieces for Jayon Brown and Rashaan Evans there. Like I said, though, Bud Dupree, they've been looking for pass rush. It's been atrocious what the Titans have put out as far as a pass rush the last couple of years. So they're hoping that Bud Dupree can be the guy to lead them. Secondary, again, is just horrible secondary last year. So they had a lot of new additions this year. Janoris Jenkins comes in. Janoris Jenkins comes in from the Saints, I believe. Because he bounced around quite a lot the last couple of seasons. Yes, from the Saints. So I like that selection. He's played well wherever he's been. So wouldn't I think he might be able to actually help them. They also drafted Caleb Farley in the first round, 22nd overall this year. He was dealing with a back issue, had back surgery this year, but I liked him. I thought Tennessee was a perfect fit for him out of Virginia Tech. So those two guys, and also Elijah Molden, third-round pick out of Washington. Was surprised he went that late. Thought he might be in the second round, but they got good value from him and from a guy that is coming from a corner factory in Washington. They've produced many guys the last couple of seasons. So with those three alone, I think this secondary could really be much improved this year, as well as with second-round pick Christian Fulton from last year. Didn't produce like they wanted to. Obviously, it was a tough season, like I said, for the Titans secondary. So we'll have to see how that pans out. The last thing I'll say about the Titans depth chart, kicking situation is weird. They don't have an established guy on the roster right now. Tucker McCann, Blake Hallbeal, those are the two guys on the depth chart right now. McCann, undrafted free agent last year, didn't play for anyone in the regular season. Hallbeal, undrafted free agent this year out of Ohio State. And I don't know why they're rolling with those. Hallbeal, I could see. I actually remember him playing. McCann, I don't remember playing in college at all. But the thing is, there's two guys out there on the market still that I think the Titans should be looking at. Dan Bailey, released by the Vikings, and Zane Gonzalez was with many people before the Titans or the Cardinals. I remember him in his last stop. So I would think Dan Bailey would be the guy. I mean, they went with a veteran last year, and Steven Gostkowski was not that great. He is actually still available as well. Mike Nugent also available. I would say Dan Bailey, though. The Titans need to go get Dan Bailey. So fantasy-wise for the Titans here, Tannehill. So Ryan Tannehill, I don't really like his fantasy value just because of Derrick Henry. I think they run too much, even though Tannehill has passed it very well when he has thrown the ball. So I like Tannehill as a backup quarterback with low QB1 upside. So that's me. Derrick Henry, obviously, I've done it the last 2 years, and I'm probably going to do it again. I just cannot bring myself to drafting Derrick Henry in a money league because he's used so much. He has a lot of wear and tear on him. I'm just so afraid that the 1 year I draft him, he is going to have an issue with the load, and they don't have anyone behind him that can really help with that. Darrington Evans, Jeremy McNichols, Brian Hill, all similar guys to me. So I know he's going to be a first round pick, but I can't bring it to myself to draft him. So good luck to anyone who does. I know he'll produce well for you, but I'll only draft him if there's no other guys that I like at that spot. So wide receivers, I already talked about Josh Reynolds a little bit and his fantasy value, how it decreased dramatically with the addition of Julio. AJ Brown, though, I think AJ Brown has a legitimate chance at being a top 5 receiver this year. He was a stud in his rookie year last year, and I have no qualms with drafting him in the second round. So Julio, though, like I said, I've never been a big Julio person. Not going to do it. I'm not drafting Julio unless he goes later than what I thought he would. If he goes late-ish and I'm comfortable with the round that it is and he's still available, I'll go with him, which the comfortability for me to draft Julio would probably be somewhere around 8. If you can get Julio in the 8th round, I think maybe that's way too deep. But the thing is, like I said, he's not the number 1 receiver anymore. He is the number 2 to AJ Brown. So I don't know if that's necessarily too late. Tight end Anthony Ferkser, kind of talked about him as well. I wouldn't be surprised if Anthony Ferkser ends up as a top 8 tight end this year. Because, like I said, Ryan Tannehill likes throwing to tight ends. Even with the addition of Julio, I think Ferkser is going to get a look. And if he produces early on in the season, I think Tannehill will gain that trust with him like he had with Walker and Smith. And Ferkser will have a great campaign as the starting tight end this year. Defensively and not touching the Titans. I know they tried to do all these things to shore up the defense. Like I said, I'm not so sure about Tart on the nose. Bud Dupree's coming back from an injury at outside linebacker. Harold Landry hasn't produced like they thought he would when they drafted him. And even though the secondary is better, everyone is young except for Janoris Jenkins. So, and Kevin Byard. Kevin Byard, one of the better safeties in the league. But with so many young guys at the corner position, I can't bring I would not even think about drafting the Titans defense in fantasy this year. And kicker, like I said, if Dan Bailey goes to the Titans, that is a draftable kicker. I would expect him to be a starter on many teams because the Titans are an offense that is going to score probably enough points. All right. Indianapolis Colts here. 10-7 for me. Week 1 is a starred game for me. Beating the Seattle Seahawks in Indianapolis. Get Carson Wentz comfortable. I think the Seahawks have a beatable defense. And it's going to be a tough game because Carson's going to have to score against Russell Wilson, even with the solid Colts defense. But like I said, I think the Colts offense versus the Seahawks defense is really where they're going to win the game. Then they go on a 4-game losing streak. The Colts have one of probably the toughest schedule in the league to open up. Home against Seattle, which, as I said, is a win. They're home against the Rams. That's a loss. At the Titans, that's a loss. And then at the Dolphins, that's a loss. At the Ravens, that is a loss. Then it kind of flattens out. It becomes way easier. So Colts fans, if they start out badly, don't worry. I think they'll be fine. Because after the Baltimore game, which is a Monday night game, a loss at Baltimore, they're gonna come back home, beat Houston. Then they go to San Francisco. That's a loss. So things aren't looking pretty. 2-5 in the first 7 games, but they come back very well in the end. They beat the Titans in Indianapolis. Thursday nighter against the Jets in Indy, that's a win. They beat the Jags at home. They go to Buffalo, that's a loss. They host Tampa, that's a loss as well. They go to Houston, that's a win. Bye week is way late. 14. You're 6-7 on the brink of the playoffs, right? So then they host the Patriots. That's the win. They go to Arizona on Christmas. That's a win. Christmas night. They host the Raiders. That's a win. And then they go to Jacksonville. That is a win. And on a 5-game winning streak to jump into the playoffs in a wild card position. Key games, like I said, week 1 against Seattle. I think that's a good game to get the monkey off Carson's back there. Week 5 as well. I think that is a Monday Night Football game at the Ravens. That's a loss, though. Week 7, Sunday nighter at the Niners. That is a loss as well. Week 9, Thursday night against the Jets. That's a win. And then finally, Christmas primetime game at Arizona. That is a win in week 16. So 10-7 for the Colts. Like them as a wild card. Roster-wise, obviously Carson Wentz coming from the Eagles in the trade. I believe he will be much better than he was in Philadelphia. Reasoning. He's with his old offense coordinator and Frank Reich as the head coach of the Colts. He also, so that's a better system. He also is surrounded by a lot better talent. The offensive line doesn't have the injury issues that it does in Philadelphia. He has playmakers in Jonathan Taylor, Marlon Mack, Naheem Hines, Jordan Wilkins at running back, T.Y. Hilton, Michael Pittman, Paris Campbell, Zach Pascal at wide receiver. Also, Jack Doyle, Mo Alley Cox, and Kylan Granson at tight end. So he'll be protected, and he has a lot better weapons to throw to. So other quarterback, though, 6th-round pick Sam Ehlinger out of Texas. I liked him. He's a tough guy. Not sure if they're going to keep 2 or 3 quarterbacks. I think with Carson's injury history, they would be wise to keep 3 quarterbacks. They don't have a veteran backup, which I think suits Carson. I think he likes to know that he's the guy. With Ehlinger only being a 6th-rounder, their slated backup right now is Jacob Eason, a former 4th-round pick out of Washington. I think Carson's mentality will be a lot better in Indianapolis because of the lack of veteran depth at the position. Wide receiver, not going to talk about the top 2, but Paris Campbell. It surprised me when I looked at the depth chart that he is listed as the 3rd wide receiver right now. He's in his 3rd year, has only played 9 games because he's gotten hurt so much in his first 2 years. So I know Paris Campbell a while ago was a guy that I had held on to in Dynasty just to see if he was going to do anything. Then he got hurt once again last year. So kind of I dropped him, kind of went to the wayside, especially when they got Michael Pittman last year. So we'll see. I do like him. I still do. I think he has upside. It's just hard being the third wide receiver instead of the second. Going to the offensive line, like I said, Carson's going to be protected a lot better than he was in Philadelphia. Getting left tackle Eric Fisher over from Kansas City, he is coming off a torn Achilles, I believe it is, last year. Not so sure that he will be there to start the season. That's why I think the week 1 against Seattle is a win, because Seattle has not proven that they can find pass rushers, consistent pass rushers. So I think even without Eric Fisher week 1, I think they'll be okay with Sam Tevy coming over from the Chargers as their main starter to start the year anyways. They also have Julian Davenport, who came over from the Texans, in the mix. We'll have to see which guy wins that backup job. I would expect it to be Sam Tevy, though. Defensively, 2 guys to talk about here. First-round pick Kwity Paye, starter at left defensive end, 21st overall. Fills out a solid line. Paye, DeForest Buckner, Grover Stewart, Al-Qadim Muhammad, Tyquan Lewis, Antoine Woods, Kamoko Toure. They also have Ben Banagu and Isaac Rochelle there as well. Deo Adiingbo. I like the depth. I think Kwity Paye was another guy that you didn't see the sack numbers at Michigan, but is tenacious. And it hurts that he doesn't have a all-world pass rusher opposite of him, because it is Al-Qadim Muhammad. So I think the Paye is going to have to step up this year in year 1 right away and produce. But I think it's going to help him playing on the left side beside the all-pro DeForest Buckner, who worked out very well for the Colts last year. Only other guy I'm going to talk about with the Colts, defense, strong side linebacker slated right now. 4th-year guy, Zaire Franklin, 7th-round pick for the Colts in 2018. I had never heard of him. I thought he was a Rams pick, but it said he was from the Colts. So their linebacker depth is not there at all. They lost Anthony Walker in free agency. I think that was a big loss for them. Bobby Okereke and Darius Leonard are the other 2 guys there on the second level. But I really don't know much about the backups that they have. EJ Speed is a converted safety. I do like Malik Jefferson, who is a 4th-string guy right now at middle linebacker. Rookie out of Texas, or 2nd-round guy out of Texas, 2nd year. But, yeah, the linebacker depth is lacking, unlike the defensive line depth. And I like their secondary depth. Their secondary and their secondary depth is very solid as well. So Blankenship fighting against Eddie Pinheiro for kicking job. I don't think that's going to be a competition. I think they just brought in Pinheiro to be a camp kicker. So fantasy-wise, Carson Wentz. Now, I think he's draftable as a backup. That just like Ryan Tannehill can have QB1 upside if he works out getting back to Frank Reich's system. So draft him as your backup and hope he plays out well enough that he either outperforms your starter or he plays well enough and your starter is playing even better that he has trade value and you can go get some other backup either on the waiver wire or trade market, and you can trade Carson Wentz. Running back, Jonathan Taylor. Absolutely love Jonathan Taylor. Drafted him last year in the first round of my Dynasty League. Was solid on my team that didn't have too many solid running backs, especially last season. So really like him. He's a top 10 guy for me. I don't think he's necessarily going to be in the top 5 yet, but he has that potential, I think, in the Colts offense with the road grading offensive line that they do have. They like to run the ball. We'll have to see if the passing game and Carson Wentz can help balance that so they're not selling out to stop Jonathan Taylor every play. I don't like the backups in fantasy at running back. Marlon Mack was surprised that they re-signed him coming off an injury. I don't think he has value. Nyheim Hines does in a flex position for a PPR league. I think Nyheim Hines does. If you draft him late, he can be a capable pass catcher for you in a flex position. Not an every week guy, though. I would say spot starter. Wideouts, just like Julio Jones, I've never been a T.Y. Hilton fan. Gets injured too many times for me. Has barren stretches. So I think the better guy would be Michael Pittman. I wouldn't be surprised if Pittman has a great year with Carson. Not sure where Michael Pittman would go, but like I said, I think he would be the better option, even though T.Y. is listed as the number 1 wide receiver. Tight end, Jack Doyle. Again, I've never been a Jack Doyle fan. So I do think Jack Doyle is a solid tight end 2 option, especially with Carson. Just like Ryan Tannehill, Carson Wentz loves tight ends. We saw that in Philadelphia with Zach Ertz and Dallas Goedert. I think that Jack Doyle could produce and be a high-end tight end 2, even possibly low-end tight end 1, if Carson really has built that trust with him. Defensively, I like the defense. I think they're draftable. They're not in that top tier, though, for me. I would say they're a top 7, 8 defense, so still starting in 10 and 12-man leagues. But I don't think they'll be that dominant because I'm not so sure about their pass rush with Pay and Muhammad as the defensive ends. Buckner's going to get his in the interior, but he's going to need help. And I'm just not so sure that the guys outside can do it at this juncture. Kicking, like I said, I don't think Rodrigo is going to have to battle. I think Pinheiro is just a show to keep Blankenship's leg mildly, healthy and not get worn out too much in camp. But Rodrigo is definitely, he showed last year in a fantastic rookie season for the Colts that he is consistent. He has the leg strength, and that he's a top fantasy kicker. And I think he is once again going to be a top 5 kicker with an offense that should be better than last year. So that is the Indianapolis Colts. Let's move on to the Jacksonville Jaguars and Trevor Lawrence. 5-12 for me for the Jags. Pretty solid season, all things considered, after last year. At the Texans week 1, that is a win. That is a key game, just like week 1 was for the Colts. I think getting a win early for Trevor Lawrence boosts their confidence in Jacksonville. Week 2, though, that's a loss against the Broncos. They host the Cardinals week 3. That is another loss. Losing in Cincinnati on Thursday night, week 4. Then they lose to the Titans at home. They beat the Dolphins, actually, in London, week 6. I think just because the Jags are such a symbol in London, I think that is going to give them the boost they need to beat a good team like the Miami Dolphins in an international series game. Bye week, week 7, they come out, go to the Seahawks. That's a loss. They host Buffalo. That is a loss. Lose at Indy. Then they do beat the Niners, which I think is another key game, another win against a team that I think will be solid this year. They beat the Falcons. They lose in LA to the Rams. They lose at the Titans. They do beat the Texans once again at home. They lose to the Jets at MetLife, which is a key game, number 1 versus number 2 pick. I think the Jets rosters overall is better than the Jags right now, though. They lose at New England. The only reason I say that is I think the defense for the Patriots is going to give Trevor Lawrence issues. And then they lose at home against the Colts to get them to 5-12. Roster-wise, obviously Trevor Lawrence, number 1 overall pick. Quarterback position, Jacksonville is very intriguing, actually. Number 1 pick, Trevor Lawrence, going to start week 1. He is the Messiah. I mean, he has been pegged to be the best quarterback since forever, since he started playing. I mean, he's touted as the best draft pick since Andrew Luck in 2012. So we'll see if the hype lives up to it. In the same division as Andrew Luck. So his backup right now on the depth chart, Gardner Minshew. Now, I don't think Gardner is going to be there week 1 because there's been so much speculation about him being traded. A deal just hasn't – no one's offered anything for him yet. I'm not sure what they can actually get. I would think that if they could recoup a 6th-round pick, which is the round that they drafted Minshew in, I think that would be a fantastic win for the Jags. But it looks like they're going to keep him right now, which brings him to the question, why did you pick up C.J. Beathard then? Because, I agree with the move because I think C.J. Beathard is a better quarterback than Gardner Minshew is. Getting him from San Francisco, I think, was a big win. And I think ultimately he will be the backup to Trevor Lawrence. Gardner Minshew will either stick as the 3rd string or get traded or released. Who knows if they only keep 2. Running back. Lawrence's college teammate, Travis Etienne, going to start week 1, 25th overall selection this year in the draft. Still befuddled me, the whole thing with him taking all of his rookie minicamp reps and OTAs at wide receiver. So we'll have to see what that looks like in the preseason, but I still think he's going to be good. Other running back to talk about, new guy, Carlos Hyde coming over from Seattle. Third string right now. I think that's where he'll stay. He'll be a veteran back that'll get a couple carries every now and then. Wide receivers, Marvin Jones Jr. coming over from Detroit. I like that. They have all the juniors. They have DJ Chark Jr., Marvin Jones Jr., Laviska Shenault Jr., all starting. So Marvin Jones has lost a step a little bit the last couple of years, but not as much as his former teammate Golden Tate. So I think Marvin Jones still contributes, drops Laviska Shenault into the third wide receiver role, which I think will benefit him as running the slot. I think that's where he will fit best. Other receiver to talk about, Jamal Agnew, listed as the sixth wide receiver right now. He also comes from the Lions. He is not going to be there for his receiving and offensive ability, though. He is coming to the Jags as one of the best returners in the league. He is slated as their kick and punt returner right now. So great signing for the Jags special teams. And one more on offense. Of course, we have to do it. Tim Tebow. I didn't think about it. I should have wore his Broncos jersey today, but I didn't think about it. So, but listed as the fourth string tight end right now. I still think Tim can make the roster. They have Chris Manhertz, James O'Shaughnessy, and their third-round pick, Luke Farrell, out of Ohio State. Those are the three guys ahead of Tim Tebow. Chris Manhertz is a blocker. He's not a receiver. O'Shaughnessy has never been a key contributor in an offense. And Farrell, I thought, was a reach in the third round. So I don't see why Tim couldn't make the roster and contribute this year. Defensively, D-line, two new additions, Roy Robertson Harris coming over from Chicago, left defensive end. Solid veteran guy, played really well on a great Bears defense. Definitely going to help in their base 3-4, coming over from a 3-4 defense in Chicago. They also got a new nose tackle this offseason, Malcolm Brown from the Saints. That was a trade. Don't have too much about Malcolm Brown. Was decent in New Orleans. I think he will play well. I really like their defensive line, their front two, their top two on the depth chart on each positions in their 3-4. Robertson Harris, Malcolm Brown, Taven Bryan, former first-round pick, Jihad Ward, who's a new addition, J. Tufele, a draft pick this year, Adam Gotsis. I think those top six are solid. Not going to talk about the linebackers. Secondary, though. Starting off at the safety position, two guys, Rayshawn Jenkins, starting strong safety right now, coming over from the Chargers. Hard hitter. I don't really like his coverage ability too much, but definitely an in-the-box safety. It's going to hit guys, going to help tremendously playing Derrick Henry and Jonathan Taylor. Other safety I want to talk about, their third-round pick, Andre Sisco out of Syracuse, the backup free safety to Jared Wilson. I think their top four safeties are solid as well. Rudy Ford, the other guy, going to be a special teamer. Andre Sisco, I think, is going to be their third safety and will contribute on defense this year. Lastly, corners, new starter opposite last year's first-round pick, C.J. Henderson. Shaq Griffin coming over from Seattle. Almost re-signed in Seattle, but Jacksonville put him over the top with extra money. I think their secondary is going to be very good. And defense overall, I think, should be upgraded. It's the offense that I think needs to help them out. Tyson Campbell, second rounder out of Georgia. Like him, not too sure on his coverage ability. They also have Sidney Jones, who has kind of rejuvenated his career in Jacksonville, and Trey Herndon as well. So overall, I like the unit. Kicker, they do have Aldrick Rosas to go along with Josh Lambo. Just like Indy, though, I think Josh Lambo is going to win the job. I think Rosas is more of a camp leg. So now, fantasy-wise, Trevor Lawrence is an interesting fantasy take because he is going to start all 16 games. And they're going to lose. I have them losing 12 times. So they could be in for some garbage points. But just like the other two quarterbacks that I've talked about, draft Lawrence as a backup. I do like him, but I don't like a rookie starting quarterback in fantasy. Now, running back, ETN. That's tough. Like I said, we need to watch in the preseason to see how much he's utilized in the backfield and how much he's utilized in the passing game. I think he's going to do both a lot, but if he doesn't have the rushing numbers, I don't think you can solely draft him higher based off just him being a receiver. So, James Robinson, his backup, I don't even know what to think about him. I don't even know if he's going to get drafted this year. He probably will based off his last season, but now that he's the backup, he's not going to produce that type of season that he had in his rookie year last year. So I wouldn't touch James Robinson unless you're handcuffing ETN. I think pairing them together could be a solid option, but I wouldn't draft James Robinson just by himself. You would have to have ETN in order to draft him, I think. Wide receiver is DJ Chark. I think he's in that second tier still. Let's see how it works out with Lawrence. But now that he has Marvin Jones there as well, I know it's going to open some stuff up, but I think DJ's still not at that superstar, top 2 rounds yet. I would say end of second and then into the third round. I think that's probably where you'll see DJ Chark go. Marvin Jones, I think he's draftable as a wide receiver 3. Spot starter. I'm higher on than Laviska Shenault. Shenault also had a solid rookie year last year, but I like Marvin Jones as a vet to come in and produce pretty well as the wide receiver 2 for them. But yeah, wide receiver 3 in fantasy for Marvin Jones. Tight end, not touching him. Not doing anything. If you want to be funny and draft in Tebow, go ahead. He might produce, he might not. I don't think any of their tight ends are going to be that great. Defensively. Now the Jags, if you're going to keep 2 defenses, Jags are a draftable defense, I think. I like their linebackers. Secondary is improved. Defensive line is improved. So I don't think they're going to be terrible on defense. I think they're probably a third quarter. So that's where you'll find the backup defenses. Like I said, if you're carrying 2, that is. I know sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. So I would think that they wouldn't be a bad backup defense. Kicker, Josh Lambo. I'm not drafting him. I don't think the Jags are going to be able to score enough. They have some tough games against good defenses. So I would not draft Josh Lambo. Finally, to the Houston Texans. So I have them having a horribly poor season. Now, this is without Deshaun Watson. Obviously, it changes if he plays, but I do not expect him to play. Unlike the Packers, Aaron Rodgers, I think, at least has a chance of playing in Green Bay this year. Deshaun has said, unlike Aaron Rodgers, Deshaun has come out and said he does not want to play in Houston. So that plus new head coach, new GM, I just think they need to move on. They need to trade him. He still has his legal situation pending. So a lot of stuff to figure out before we know if Deshaun is going to play in Houston or if he's traded, whatever. So schedule-wise, week 1, they start off with a loss, hosting the Jags. They go to Cleveland. That's a loss. They're home against the Panthers on Thursday night football, week 3. That is a loss. That's a key game. Lose at Buffalo. They do beat the Patriots at home week 5. I think they're capable of doing that. They lose in Indy, lose at Arizona, lose against the Rams at home, lose at Miami. They lose to the Titans at home. They lose to the Jets, or they lose to the Titans in Nashville, lose to the Jets at home, lose to the Colts at home, lose to the Seahawks at home. They beat the Jags in the rematch in Jacksonville. That's another key game. I think that's just because it's their second win. And then the Patriots game is also a key game because it's their first win. And then they lose to the Chargers at home, lose at San Francisco, and then lose to the Titans at home. So a horrible season for the Texans. I think they'll be in square contention for the number 1 pick. It hurt them very badly. Their trade for Laramie Tunsil hurt them tremendously this offseason because of not having that number 3 overall pick, giving it to the Dolphins. I'm not so sure that they wouldn't have went quarterback had that been their selection. So depth chart wise, Deshaun Watson, obviously. Is he going to get traded? That's the number 1 key to predicting what the Texans will be like this season. That's why I would not make any projections. I'm doing this now just because I'm expecting Deshaun to get traded or not play for the Texans, even if he isn't traded. So that brings into question the next 3 quarterbacks on the depth chart. Tyrod Taylor, coming from the Chargers, once again, going to be the starter in front of a rookie quarterback. Granted, this time it's not a first-round quarterback. It is third-rounder Davis Mills, who essentially was their first-round pick because he was their first pick of the draft this year. Didn't have a selection until the 3rd round. So I know Davis Mills is not going to play this year. He should not play this year. Tyrod is a serviceable starter, but he doesn't win that much. I mean, we've seen it. It's just not the greatest option. They also do have Jeff Driscoll, who came over from the Broncos. He won't make the roster. Possibly he will if they keep 3 and trade Watson, but I highly doubt he makes the roster, even if because I think they're going to keep 2, 3 if they need a spot for Deshaun. But running backs, Phillip Lindsay coming over from the Broncos as well. Mark Ingram from the Ravens. and then Rex Burkhead from the Patriots. The Texans, I have so many guys started because they have a million new people this year. So it was just ridiculous. I mean, every week in free agency, it'd be like, oh, the Texans signed this guy, this guy, this guy. Like, how many spots do they have? Like, seriously. But I like Phillip Lindsay. David Johnson still listed as the starter. I think Phillip Lindsay has upside. I'm not sure he's an every down back, though. We saw it when the Broncos brought in Melvin Gordon last year. Melvin took the majority of the handoffs. Phillip Lindsay was slotted in as more of the pass-catching guy. So Mark Ingram, I'm not sure how much he has left. He faded in Baltimore his last season there. They utilized J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards more. So, I'm not sure how much he actually has left there. And then Rex Burkhead, the do-it-all running back from the Patriots, he's going to be the guy, I think, goal line. He's going to get a lot of the touches there and vulture touchdowns from Phillip Lindsay and David Johnson. Receivers, not going to talk about the top three, but the next three. Third-round pick, Nico Collins out of Michigan. Big body guy. Will help. His size will help because the top three guys, Brandon Cooks, Randall Cobb, Kiki QT, not the biggest. So Nico Collins will help in the jump balls in the red zone. Chris Conley coming from the Jags, formerly of the Chiefs as well. I think that's an intriguing selection or free agency signing this year. Could be a contributor. I highly doubt it, though. He'll probably play special teams a lot. And then Andre Roberts coming over from the Bills will be their punt returner or kick returner and backup punt returner right now. Really like him, one of the better returners in the league. So he will stick there, even being sixth on the wide receiver depth chart. Tight ends. Only one guy I'm going to talk about, Brevin Jordan, the 5th round pick this year out of Miami. 3rd string tight end right now, behind Jordan Akins and Kahale Warring. They also have Pharaoh Brown. I would expect Brevin Jordan to be the starter by, mid-season or whenever. I just think his talent far outweighs the top two guys. And he said he likes blocking, which was a thing that people didn't think he did very much. So, offensive line, they get Justin Britt from the Seahawks. He didn't play in 2020. He was a free agent the entire season. Had a couple tryouts this spring. Ultimately ended up signing with the Texans. Was solid in Seattle. I know Russell Wilson liked him. And we'll have to see. I think he will be okay. Having a year off, I think will help him because he had gotten an injury. That's why he was recovering from that injury early last season and just never stuck with anyone. So, two other guys on the offensive line, Marcus Cannon from the Patriots in a trade, listed as the starting right guard, which is intriguing because he played right tackle for the Patriots. But Titus Howard, their former second-round pick, is slated there. Marcus Cannon, the backup right tackle right now, but starting right guard. And then Cannon's backup, Lane Taylor, coming over from the Packers, was a very solid depth piece in Green Bay. Had started a bunch with some of their injuries that they had the last couple of seasons on the offensive line. Can play. I'm not sure if he can play all 5, but he can play 4 out of the 5 at least. I know he's played right guard, right tackle, and left guard. I don't think he's played left tackle yet in his career, and I'm pretty sure he hasn't played center. So maybe he only can play 3 out of the 5, but very versatile for Lane Taylor. Defensively, D-line. I actually have 5 defensive linemen started here. Vincent Taylor starting left defensive end in their 3-4 coming from the Browns. He only has one career start. So that's interesting to say the least. Yeah, I don't know too much about Vincent Taylor. So limited starting experience, very limited, almost none. Getting a shot to start for the Texans this year. Malik Collins, starting nose tackle, coming from the Raiders, formerly a second-round pick of the Cowboys out of Nebraska. I like him. I think he'll be good for them. He has to stay on the field, though. He's had injury issues throughout his career. Didn't produce like the Cowboys wanted him to in Dallas. But I do like him, though. Behind Vincent Taylor at left DN, DeMarcus Walker, coming from the Broncos, was a part of a very good defense in Denver. I'm not so sure he doesn't win that defensive end spot from Vincent Taylor, considering DeMarcus Walker has played a lot more than Vincent has. And I just think DeMarcus Walker is probably a better player. Second and third string nose tackles here. Jaleel Johnson, coming from the Vikings. I believe he was a former third-round pick for them. Hasn't played too much in his career, but definitely has the ability to. And then the interesting thing to me was the third-string nose tackle for the Texans. 2020 second-round pick, Ross Blacklock out of Washington, I believe. Didn't play that much last year as if I can remember anyways. And to see a second-year, second-round pick be a third string is just it baffles me to see that. So I'm not sure if he's going to stay at nose or if he's going to go and back up Charles Omenihu at right defensive end, because Roy Lopez is the guy right there, and I'm not so sure that he ends up being the guy, because I like Blacklock's upside more than Lopez. So linebackers, first starter, the only starter I'm going to talk about, Christian Kirksey, coming over from the Packers. Tackling machine, has injury issues, but I think he's a solid addition beside Zach Cunningham, who got paid this offseason. The four backups, all new at the linebacker positions. Jordan Jenkins from the Jets, Neville Hewitt from the Jets, Kamu Grugier-Hill from the Dolphins, and Shaq Lawson from the Dolphins. Shaq Lawson coming in a trade. Now, this is why I wish Chris was here, because he would know a lot more than me about Jordan Jenkins and Neville Hewitt. But Neville Hewitt, or Jordan Jenkins, I'll start off. Good outside linebacker in the 3-4. I think him being in a situational pass rush role will suit him well, just like it will Shaq Lawson. I think Shaq Lawson could still beat out Jacob Martin at strong side outside linebacker, but that's just me. I like Shaq Lawson. So, and the other two, the two inside backups, Neville Hewitt from the Jets and Kamu Grugier-Hill from the Dolphins. Kamu Grugier-Hill has never been a very good defensive player. He's been a special teams ace, though, so I wouldn't be surprised if he is that special teams guy once again. Neville Hewitt is so. I don't think he's the greatest, but he'll be all right. Not having to start, They do also have Joe Thomas, Kevin Pierre-Louis, and then Derek Rivers as well on the outside. Secondary, two guys, Terrence Mitchell from the Browns. Didn't have the greatest year last year, but is considered one of the better second corners in the league. Will get picked on, though. Bradley Roby on the other side, Vernon Hargraves in the slot. I'm not so sold on Terrence Mitchell, though. Desmond King, his backup from the Titans, never materialized anything with the Titans last year, coming from in a trade during the season from the Chargers. He's definitely a good returner, but like I said, they have Andre Roberts to do that, so Desmond King won't be relied upon. He's moving to corner, which is something to look at. Or he's moving back to corner, I believe. I think he was drafted as a corner and then went to safety and then is moving back to corner. So we'll have to see what Desmond King brings. He's the fourth corner right now. I think their top three are pretty good, especially Bradley Roby. Vernon Hargreaves has had a resurgence in Houston. So, all right. And finally, forgot punter. Cam Johnston coming over from the Eagles. That is going to make the Texans one of the best special teams in the league. Yes, I said that. Best special teams in the league. The Texans should be up there. Only thing now that they need is John Fossil to run their special teams. So, Cam Johnston from the Eagles. Boomer of a leg. Wouldn't be surprised if he's one of the best punters once again this year, especially in net average. Fantasy-wise, not touching the quarterbacks. Even Deshaun Watson. Because you don't know. You just do not know what his situation is right now. Running backs. Now, David Johnson is slated as the starter. They have a little bit better of an offensive line this year. They should be able to run the ball a bit more. I don't know. I would say draft David Johnson as an RB2, mid RB2, because just for the fact that he is going to get carries. The only thing is, he's probably not going to get a lot of receptions because of the presence of Phillip Lindsay and Rex Burkhead. So there you go. Phillip Lindsay, I think he can draft as a flex starter. Wide receivers. Again, it's tough without knowing who the quarterbacks are going to be. Brandon Cooks, I think, is a solid option. I don't like any of the other receivers, though. But I think Brandon Cooks could be a wide receiver 3 for you with mid-tier wide receiver 2 upside. Tight ends, like I said, Brevin Jordan, I think, is a sneaky selection if he can elevate himself to the starting spot. I think tight end's different because I think even with Tyrod Taylor at quarterback, I think that would benefit Brevin Jordan and the tight end position for the Texans. So, draft Brevin Jordan late. I'm not so sure you should draft him as your backup tight end. I would say if there's no receivers that you like near the end of the draft or running backs, which usually running back is pretty barren at that point, go with Brevin Jordan. I mean, take a shot at him. So, defensively, not touching it. I don't like the front three as much. The inside linebackers I like, but the outside are not the greatest. Whitney Merciless is pretty good, but Jacob Martin I have no confidence in. Secondary is so-so. Bradley Roby is pretty good. Vernon Hargreaves, like I said, has had a resurgence in Houston. The safeties are very good. Eric Murray, Justin Reed are one of the better tandems. But there's just too many question marks for me. So I'm not touching the Texans defense. Kaimi Fairbairn, though, for the Texans special teams, I think Fairbairn should once again be a top 5 kicker, has a monster leg, and even with the inefficiency of the offense. Actually, I'm going to recant my statement. He's not going to be a top 5 kicker. Will be a startable kicker, but I think the lack of offense that you're going to see with Tyrod Taylor is going to hurt his chances. So I would be cautious about drafting Kaimi Fairbairn this year. So that is the AFC South, y'all. Recap. Texans, Titans winning the division at 11-6. Colts, wild card at 10-7. Jags, third place, 5-12. And the lowly Texans finish it out, probably with the number 1 overall pick to get their quarterback of the future at 2-15. Next Monday, we will have the AFC West season preview. Our last AFC division to go over. We'll be talking Patrick Mahomes, Justin Herbert, Derek Carr, and whoever is starting for the Broncos, Teddy Bridgewater, Drew Lock, or possibly Aaron Rodgers. We will be having on Friday our NFC South preview. Let us know what y'all think about my AFC South record predictions here and fantasy analysis. Love to hear your thoughts. We'll have them posted along with our others on our Instagram and Twitter at FAA Podcast on both of those, FAApodcast.com as well. I know my parents bought some merch. They modeled it nicely on Facebook. That is, you can see that picture on our Facebook page as well there. Thank y'all for following here on